Thank you for your prayer for me. As I think Karen indicated, the last week in May was recording a study on Genesis, and it was on my feet for 4 hours a day, 5 days a week. And that evidently set off something. A nerve that runs down over the pelvis here can get constricted, and it produces, in that case, very severe burning in the thighs. And so I've received an injection, and so far, but the burning has had declined over the following weeks, and so it's quite manageable at this point. So thank you for your prayers. Good time with the New Living Translation committee. This will be my last time with them, and then camp meeting in Alabama. I'll be here today and next week, and then we're gone for 5 weeks. And some of you, Eddie Bryson will be in contact with to be filling in the class. So thank you.
Dr. Oswalt,
Yeah.
this is Beth. I just wanted to say a big praise. My dad, Ronald Johns, will be coming home on the July 4th.
Praise the Lord.
July 4th. So celebration big time.
Great. That is good news. Okay, we're looking at Genesis chapter 31. We concluded some time ago looking at the first 2 verses of 31, in which the sons of Laban, who were the ones, if you remember, that led all of the striped and spotted sheep away, now the sheep are giving birth to striped and spotted and black ones all over the place. And the sons were saying, Jacob has taken all that was our father's, and from what was our father's, he has gained all this wealth. Wonderful example of projection. They were the ones who took those sheep away, and now they're blaming Jacob for somehow having failed this. So we begin with 31:3. Jacob saw that Laban did not regard him with favor as before. Then the Lord said to Jacob, return to the land of your fathers and to your kindred, and I'll be with you. Now compare that to what we have in chapter 30, verses 25 and 26. What happened there in those verses? Jacob wanted to go home. Now what's happening? God is telling him to go home. There's the difference. There's the difference between our wishes and God's wishes. And one of the things that's going to run all through this is human initiative, divine initiative. And one of the issues is going to be, where is our dependence in all of this? So finally, we've got a word from God to go home. And once again, this whole issue of the will of God, there's a fine line. We can become paranoid. Well, what color socks should I put on today, God? What do you want me to do next? We can become paranoid there, or we can just sail off on our own and say, oh, God, please bless what I've decided to do. So that very fine line, Lord, I want your will. I want your way. I want to be doing what you're about. And God then saying, go ahead. So that for me as a young Christian, I struggled with this whole issue and came to the point where I think, as I've said to you before, where I said, Lord, I'm going to trust your direction in my choices. I've given all my choices to you. I'm going to trust your direction. And so I'm going to move ahead with choices, and I'm going to trust you to stop me if indeed this is not what I should be doing. And that became for me a source of freedom in life, to be able genuinely trusting him, genuinely seeking to do his will, and trusting him to make his will evident in the day-to-day choices. Jan?
I remember at a conference, it was Urbana, where kids were coming, they'd say, I'm so afraid I'm gonna miss God's will, I'm gonna miss God's will. And I think the Lord helped me with, he will give you the desires of your heart. And I said, ask God to put his desires in your heart. Yes. And then you can go forward knowing that you've asked for his in your heart. So
yes, yes, yes. So there's that fine line. And so here now, God has said, all right, go now. So the issue here, and I was working on both these lessons this week and next week, last night and this morning, and something that's going to appear in next week's lesson I want to talk about today. We've talked before about the family structure, that the bottom line is the father's house. And father here is really grandfather. In the father's house are then the grandfather and grandmother, and their children, and their grandchildren, now, they may not be living in the same building, but they're living in close proximity to one another. And they are all under the authority, as I've said before, something that I like very much, under the authority of the grandfather and the grandmother. So that's the background through all of this. So what happens then in verse 4 through 8? What is Jacob doing, and why is he doing it?
he's gonna speak away.
All right. All right. Now we think, well, you just make the choice and go. It's not that simple. It's not that simple. You don't disconnect yourself from the rest of the family. And also, go back now and look at chapter 30, verse 37. What happened back there? Oh, excuse me, not that one. It's verses 26 and following. What happened there? He asked permission there, and what happened? Laban talked him into staying because he is the goose that laid the golden eggs. And so I don't want to let you go. So he's asked once, and Laban has, in effect, denied it. And so this time he says, okay, I'm going. But why is God breaking up the family like this?
family too.
Pardon? Yeah, but the wives belong to the other guy.
He said about the man, therefore his father should take precedence.
These children of Laban belong to Laban. And the grandchildren as well. So what's going on? Why is God doing this? Okay, the promise is all tied up here. God is saying, but why does he have to go back? Can't he be the promised child in Haran?
He's in the wrong place.
He's in the wrong place. The promise had three parts: children, land, and blessing. Blessing to the nations. So, I heard someone say check. There it is. So, for the promise to be fulfilled, he's got to go back to the land. Now, let's talk about that a little bit. Why is the land so significant? Yes, although obviously Jacob has gotten a lot of wealth in Haran as well. Why is the land significant to God? Pardon? He wants to develop his people there, yes. Okay, it was part of the covenant. Obedience? I don't know the answer. That's why I'm asking you. I've got some ideas, but the text doesn't answer it. But again, you know, what I'm trying to model for you here is this whole approach to biblical interpretation. You got to ask yourself questions to which you may not, or the Bible may not give us immediate answers. But if it's there on purpose. Okay? Okay. I think that's very significant. As I've said to you before, this Canaan is the crossroads from Mesopotamia to Egypt, and from the Far East to the West. I've often said to students, here are the two super highways in the world, and God puts his people square in the middle of them, which is helpful because you can have contact, but it's also dangerous because you could get run over by an 18-wheeler. So, yes, I think that's a very important element. Jan?
Part of the curse was that the land would be cursed.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if this is part of, this place here is going to be blessed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, symbolic of God's intent to bless the entire world.
plan. I wonder if it's part of God's redemption plan.
Yeah,
These things
yeah,
that-
yeah. I think it is. It says again that God's interest is not merely in the spiritual. God's interest is in the entire creation, physical and spiritual together. Charlie?
Possible that with your idea of the superhighway, thinking ahead to Christ, and then with Paul and all of his missionary journeys, that really was the center of the world at that point in time.
Yeah.
Granted, he could have risen up Christ anywhere, but the idea that he did it there.
Yes. Yes.
So therefore, just as he chose a people, he had to choose a geography too.
I think that's right. I think that's right. So it matters that Jacob be here. Pauline?
That's what God gave Abraham a promise there. He told him to look that way, that, and you know what, that promise still holds today. That's why I am so for Israel.
The issue, though, is why did God give that promise? And that's what we have been talking about here. So God says, I want you to go back. I want you to go back to the land of your fathers and your kindred, and then renewing what he had said at Bethel, and I will be with you. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Now, look at verse 8 through 12. What does he report to his wives? Yes, yes. But farther on than that. Yes, go on. Why did these things happen? Why did the flocks become all spotted and striped and black? According to this statement, look especially at. Yes? Keep going. Yeah. Where did these, it just happened. God showed me in a dream that was what was going to happen. All the goats that mate with the flock are striped, spotted, and mottled, for I've seen all that Laban has done to you. Well, what were we told in the previous chapter?
That he was, the sons were saying stolen.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Look at chapter 30.
Jacob proposed the separation and Laban agreed to it.
I'm looking at verse 37 in chapter 30. Did this just happen? He dreamed about it, but what does chapter 30 say? Yeah, yeah. Chapter 30 says Jacob did it. Chapter 31 says, oh, it just happened. I saw it in a dream. God did it. How are you going to put those two together? Pauline?
That people may have known something about the plants and bark and all that kind of stuff, or what it could do, that they were attuned to that kind of thing. God would have given them that kind of knowledge, and God would use that knowledge that he gave to Jacob to affect the city.
Yeah, that explains chapter 30. It does not explain 31. Why did this happen? I did it. God did it supernaturally. Which one?
Jacob had the dream and then he went out and implemented it.
That's one possibility, though it's interesting that that chronology is reversed in the text.
We don't live in Bible, but if we make our plans, the final outcomes in God's hands.
Yeah,
But it's, yeah, I'm wondering if the one is looking at it, you know, horizontally and one's looking at it vertically. The same.
yeah,
Same.
yeah,
Same.
yeah.
He wants to convince his wives to leave.
Yes. Yes. I didn't do this. God did it. So we need to go. Have you ever done that? That we have taken certain actions and then we baptized it with that's God's will. Now, if I'm pointing one finger at you, I've got three pointing at me.
I don't know that I've done it, but I think I'll give it a try.
I don't know that I've done it, but I think I'll give it a try.
Seaman said in a Bible study way many years ago, she said, she was telling us, the wives, the seminary wives, she said, I said to my husband, David Seaman, I can argue with you, but I can't argue with you and God. So leave God out of it.
I can argue with you, but I can't argue with you and God, so leave God out of this. Yes. Now, I don't know, again, I don't know the answer here, but I think it's very significant that both versions are put in here. What do we know about Jacob?
Steve.
He was a manipulator, a deceiver. So would he be particularly capable of this sort of thing? I think so.
Think too, even if the Lord had done it, he could still put his slant on it. I mean, if the Lord's doing it to push his, make his purposes move forward, I think Jacob could still cash in on it.
Yes.
Hey,
He knew it.
He knew how to do it. Yes. 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 So again, simply for our thinking and for our looking at our own lives, I think this is very interesting that we've got one naturalistic explanation and one supernatural one. Now, as I think Charlie said at the outset, it's possible that indeed both of those can fit together. It's possible that Jacob did have a dream and as a result made the choice to put in the peeled branches in the water. That's not impossible. But I think it's significant that that chronological order is reversed.
Tom, I have a question. The two translations that I looked at, verse 37, it didn't say Jacob said. It's the story in the third place. It just says, so Jacob took.
Yeah.
So in the Hebrew, does it say?
Yeah, it's
said it, or is this someone of Moses writing the story?
no, the said is over with the wives telling the dream.
Okay.
This is what Jacob says. I had a dream and I saw this all happening and it was wonderful. Here, the narrator is telling what happened.
that leaves the possibility that there could have been a dream and this was not told.
Yes, yes, yes. But before I leave it, I just want to say it's very easy for us to baptize what we want to do with an overlay of God told me, God said to me, God did. And that's a point at which we've got to be very careful. Is this my work or is this God's work? Am I trying to pull God in to justify what I want to do? Or to explain what I did? All right. So why did Laban not want to let them go? Money? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. He knew about the blessing. He had seen the evidence of God's care. And I think once again, this is so indicative of biblical authority that Jacob is hardly the ideal believer. And yet, God keeps his promises. And Laban sees it.
God working on Jacob.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Yes. As we said back when we were looking at chapter 27, God will take us any way he can get us, but he's not going to leave us there. So yes, unquestionably, God is at work. But there's a key point. Will we allow God to work in our lives in such a way that people around us see it? And however they choose to explain it, they can't avoid the reality. God's blessing is apparent in your life, and that blessing is evident to people around us. So Laban says, hey, you're a cash cow. I can't leave that. However, I think also the culture. These are my daughters. We're going to see that in the rest of the chapter. These are my daughters. These are my grandchildren. And you can't run off with them. So again, what we see is the conflict between divine purpose and culture. Divine purpose trumps culture. If I may use a card game. Yes, question.
And also God, because it was cultural for them to be there, God pulling him away from a not healthy environment so that God could help him grow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Beyond just being unstable.
Yeah.
Not so.
Yeah.
That,
Oh, yes. 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 Yeah. Yeah, I don't either. But yes, again, divine purpose. For my purpose to be fulfilled, Jacob, you got to be in the promised land. And that is more significant than culture. This is always the challenge that we Christians will face. We are expected to be part of the culture. We're expected to be in the world, but not of it. And that's always going to be the challenge. The danger is that there are too many instances in the history of the church when culture has trumped divine purpose. In our attempt to relate the faith in terms that the culture can perceive, and this, of course, is exactly where we are in the present sexual crisis. The culture says, you are the Lord of your own sexuality. You determine what your sexual orientation is, and nobody can tell you. The Bible says no. God determines your sexual orientation. So there it is, constantly. We've got to relate culturally, and yet we cannot allow our attempt to relate culturally to somehow corrupt the divine purpose. So, this is verse 17. Rachel and Leah have said, hey, he has stolen our dowry. That's previous to 17. Verse 14. Is there any portion or inheritance left to us in our father's house? Are we not regarded by him as foreigners? He has sold us. He's indeed devoured our money. Almost certainly what that's talking about is their dowry. When they were married, Laban would have deposited a certain amount of money for each of them. The whole purpose of that is if their husband should be killed or if he should divorce them, they have this money which they can use then to survive. They're saying it was deposited, but he has spent the deposit and there's nothing left. So they're saying, well, there is cause for us to leave the father's house. Whether that was legally true or not, I don't think we can be sure. But from their point of view, we don't have any more obligation to him. Okay, so 17. Jacob arose and set his sons and his wives on camels. He drove away all his livestock, all his property that he gained, the livestock in his possession that he had acquired in Padan Aram, to go to the land of Canaan to his father Isaac. We'll want to remember that. Now, it may be August before we talk about it, but I'll call it to your attention. To the land of Canaan, to his father Isaac. Laban had gone to shear his sheep, and Rachel stole her father's household gods. As I indicate here, there is some reason to believe, it's not open and shut, but there's some reason to believe that the person who possessed the household gods owned the household. It's the deed. She stole the household gods. Now look at verse 20. Jacob tricked Laban the Aramean by not telling him that he intended to flee. That's the ESV. NIV says Jacob deceived Laban. So my question is, was Jacob justified in this? And it's interesting that the Bible chooses that word. Tricked or deceived.
New King James says they stole away.
Yeah.
Would it be any different from like when Gideon poured down his father's gods in the night? I mean, just fear of not wanting to have that confrontation, just leaving with, although I guess that doesn't go with deceit, but.
Well, I get the feeling that Laban wasn't gonna let him go. And so in order for Jacob to do what he felt like he needed to do, that's what he, which was leave. Really, certainly that's what he wanted to do. He had to trick Laban, otherwise he was gonna have a hard time getting out with all the loot.
Look over at verse 26. What light does that shed on it? Now again, we may say he's lying, but what does he say? What does Laban say?
Angry, could have done harm, but
Yeah.
he said that God interceded in a dream.
I'm particularly interested in 28.
Done foolishly.
Yeah.
He's pulling the grandma card.
Yeah. Yeah. He is saying, verse 26, I would have sent you away with mirth, this is 27, sorry, with mirth and songs, with tambourine and lyre.
Or he refused when Jacob asked him everything. No.
Although he didn't say you can't go, he said, what can I do to make you stay? What kind of a deal will you make with me and stay? It was not a flat out refusal.
Jacob was acting out of fear that Laban was not supposed to the reality of what actually was.
Yes. Yes.
Although he says, Laban says that he had the power.
Oh, yes.
Boy,
Yes. Yes. Especially in this situation now, where in some sense, Jacob has acted illegally. My point here is simply to say, could Jacob have done differently? Could Jacob have said, Laban, I'm going to go. Now, I'll go with your permission or I'll go without your permission, but I'm going to go.
It strikes me that if Jacob was a conniving kind of guy, those that are that way think everybody else is like them.
Exactly. Geraldine, you were going to say something.
Then trusting in God, that
Yes. And that's sort of where I'm driving here is he doesn't ask God, how should I do this? He doesn't ask what is the way that has most integrity. He didn't ask that. He just says, deception. This is the old Jacob. He's not gone very far down the road yet. He recognizes, yes, God did this for me. God kept his promises to me. That's why I am wealthy and Laban is not as wealthy as he might have been. And God's for me. I am, yes. Can I therefore stand tall and do the right thing, even if it might turn out to be costly? No. And what Charlie has said, I think, is exactly right. Now, and before I let you go here, you know, Rachel stealing the household gods, Laban trying to figure out some way to hang on to this golden goose, Jacob deceiving. What do we think about these people? As somebody said 3 weeks ago, they deserved each other. Relationships are messy. And to go back, and I will let you go in just a minute. How is the world to be saved? Trust, believe, obey. Abraham, the man of faith. How does this work with a crook? Can it work with a crook? Well, the answer is going to be yes, but it's messy. Very messy. And it's in this context that I think, oh, Jacob, I wish you had said to Laban, God has told me I need to go back to my land. Now, will you let me go? If not, I'm going to go. But he didn't do that. Can we afford to choose the way of integrity? Can we afford not to choose the way of integrity? See you next week.